Hey everybody, I am back with another movie spoiler review. To kick off Father's Day movie review month, picking up where I left off with the last film, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, now I'll be covering Volume 2. Now, I've already covered last year Guardians of the Galaxy 3, so it's already up on my YouTube channel. So, if you want to hear my thoughts on the other Guardians films, please visit my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl, or follow me in the various links in the description below with my various social media uh, places. And so, yeah. Uh, Now, as I mentioned in my previous stuff, the Guardians films, although good, not in my, you know, top five, and hell, probably not even exactly my top 10 favorite MCU films. Most people consider like the Guardians films like that. Oh my god, like they top tier, which I will not disagree. But in my humble opinion, they're cool, but not my cup of tea. Maybe it's just James Gunn, just like I agree there. He's really good as a director. His style comedy is like is there, but it's not my cup of tea. But just to wrap up the trilogy, because I pretty much covered my bases with Marvel's Phase 1 and 2, and mostly uh 3, I think. Because eventually I want to start getting to the Avengers films and reviewing those. Uh, so yeah, I covered definitely all the Iron Man films when a couple years ago when I did all the Iron Man content with some comics, the movies, the TV shows. So it's also up on my YouTube channel. The Hulk. Did I do Thor? The first Thor film? Don't know. I'd like to think I did. Because I know I covered, yeah, did Love and Thunder, obviously. Yeah, the first Thor film. Yeah, I definitely, uh, you know, uh, reviewed that. So, and then of course Captain America. So yeah, uh, and then of course all the Ant Man films. God, I do not want to revisit Thor: The Dark World at all. You know, you say what you will about like other stuff. I think Dark World, well, not until like Secret Invasion and Ant Man 3. Uh, Prior to that, I thought like Thor: The Dark World part was the worst of the worst. But Secret Invasion is like beat it by a country mile. But yeah, so besides Dark World, uh, uh, yeah, I think Thor Ragnarok I did not do. Yeah, so pretty much like Ragnarok and yeah, I think like besides Dark World, I think Thor Ragnarok is the only other uh MCU movie in the Infinity Saga that I did not review yet. But I pretty much covered my bases with all the other stuff. aside from Dark World. So I can pretty much get into, well, maybe like uh because it's been a minute since I did any kind of Thor content. So maybe by next month I will put Thor Ragnarok on the list so I can just get that out the way. So that way I can just start getting into all the Avengers films, consecutively. Uh anyway, yeah. But let's continue on with the subject at hand. So, Guardians of the Galaxy, written and directed by James Gunn, starring Chris Pratt as Peter Quill, Zoe Saldana, Gamora, Dave Bautista, Drax, Vin Diesel, Baby Groot, Bradley Cooper, Rocket, Michael Rooker as Yondu, Karen Gillan, Nebula. Uh, but we got some new cast members here. We got Palm Clementif as Mantis, Sylvester Stallone as Stakar Ugard, Kurt Russell as Ego, uh, and Elizabeth Debicki as Aisha, the High Priestess, the Golden High Priestess of the Sovereign People. Uh, and we got like a few people, because kudos to James Gunn to like bring up and at least acknowledge the fact that the Guardians that we know weren't the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Sylvester Stallone's character Stakar, and the people around him were the technically original Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics. From like way way back. I'm pretty sure maybe like in the '80s or something like that. Uh, so that was pretty dope. Even though they're technically the Ravagers in the films, but they will be considered like the Guardians also in the older comics. Uh, but get this. Uh, I could have sworn one of the female members among the crew of uh, Stakar, I could have sworn that was I think it was Michelle Yeoh. But I could have sworn it looks like that Night Sister that I saw from Ahsoka, the main one. But I could be confusing the two. Let me check something. Morgan Elsbeth, Deanna Lee Insanto. Sorry, I gotta know. No. Okay. I'm just confusing the two. Because I could have sworn, because had like some kind of bit of makeup on, but it's like, wait a minute, is that the lady? Because Disney like to flip flop with actors from like Marvel stuff into the Star Wars stuff from time to time, and it's like, oh wow, did I know like the Morgan Elsbeth was in the thing, but no, that was a different lady. Sorry, I went off on a little tangent here, but I just had to know because I was like, man, is that the same woman? But no, sorry. Anyway, so picking up where we left off, now the Guardians are established in the universe as like the Guardians and everything like that. So they pretty much taking up jobs, getting essentially paid for doing like bounties and stuff like that, or just doing whatever services that is required. So they protect these batteries from this, tentacle monster. They they stop it, you know, among this musical number thing, and Guardians films are just one giant soundtrack. But I don't know, the music in the first film is still like high tier, in my opinion. And not saying like the other music in the other films or the Guardian special were terrible, but they didn't hit the same way as the music in the first film did. I'm not sure why. Maybe just it depends on your taste in music, I guess. But I don't know. When I first heard the music and the as soon as the first trailer of the first Guardians film, came about, that music was on point. The other stuff that came after it didn't really vibe with me. But anyway, so uh, they managed to stop the creature, and in return, the Sovereign gave them their prisoner, which was Nebula, who tried to steal the batteries in the first place, but got caught. Given the fact that you're supposed to be the adopted daughter of Thanos, you would think you would have been more stealthy. But I guess that's more Gamora's thing, I guess. Because I guess Nebula doesn't have that level of finesse as Gamora does. Because Gamora, from my mind's eye, seems more like a scalpel, while Nebula seems more like a hammer. So the Guardians leave while Rocket just goofishly, snatches a few batteries, unbeknownst to anybody else. So now, the Sovereign send out her forces, and it's like a giant Galaga game. Well, Rocket and Quill's taking over the controls, trying to outmaneuver all of them. And a funny dynamic where the Sovereign people are so high and mighty about themselves, where they don't even bother to be in their own ships. They're in their home base manually, or sorry, remotely controlling their starfighters with like some like a video game. It was kind of funny, and I really enjoy that. No other kind of sci-fi thing, from what I remember, ever does something like this. I'm pretty sure there are, but I probably either forgot or haven't seen it. But this is like so unique. It's hilarious. And the Guardians get saved by this mysterious figure. They hyper jump to this forest planet, where Rocket becomes like acting like a complete dick to everybody. He has his little arc in this film about how like he's pushing people away because he's haven't gotten used to the fact that he's among essentially a family. Now, if you know what's going on with like what happened to him in his past with after you watch Guardians 3, you know why. So they are welcomed by Quill's actual father, uh, played amazingly by Kurt Russell. And I honestly say, like, you know, like I know people like the High Evolutionary. He's fine, but I don't care for this like weird outburst loud kind of thing, except for a few moments. But it's just like there's a saying about this where it's like um it's like a it's like a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. And if you watch my TikTok videos, I do like quotes of the day kind of thing. And there's quite a few quotes I remember from Theodore Roosevelt. One of which, being one of his famous ones, is that "speak softly but carry a big stick" kind of thing. And that's why I did not care for the High Evolutionary like that, because he has to be loud to be threatening kind of thing, and it's like I don't personally find that necessary for a villain. Like Doctor Doom is a great villain, not because he's loud and like out there like that. He doesn't need to be, kind of thing. He let his actions, speak for him. It's like of course he's monologuing. The villains do monologue, but he has a gravitas about it, and that's why same thing with like Kingpin. It's very rarely you see him outburst, but when he does, it's a serious thing. Here, Kurt Russell was an amazing actor, by the way. I love Kurt Russell. He's awesome, man. He just ages gracefully, and his skills is just like unreal as an actor. And I love his, in terms of Guardians villains or Guardians roles gallery from the films, he is by far the best one, by far. Uh, and uh, he got that same kind of quality. He's like he's not that loud until the tail end of the film when things get really serious. But he's always been just smooth with it throughout this entire film, and he's just because he's cool. Kurt Russell's just like one of those things that's kind of low key, kind of cool dude. Uh, like that kind of mid to late 70s kind of cool dude. Um, Man, there's got to be some Kurt Russell movies I want to review for this channel, because man, I remember watching at least a fair amount of films with him in it. He's like one of those cool action stars of the 80s, and I don't think people give like that man enough. People give him respect, but he deserves so much more. Because Tango and Cash, that was another one. He was in Tango and Cash, which ironically also stars Sylvester Stallone, I think, which he's also in this film. So you got Tango and Cash in this freaking film, The Guardians 2, which is so freaking fun. It's criminal that they never interacted with each other. God. Man. Yeah, I know it wasn't crazy. God, matter of fact, I should put Tango and Cash on the freaking list, because God dog it, that's like a fun old school film, man. Oh God, 1999. Like a cool cop. I think that's like a cop kind of movie. It's like a late 90s, man. That is a fun film. I put this on the list. Tango and Cash, man. I barely remember it, but I know I watched it as a kid. But man, yeah, I need to put it on a list. Probably like before, I don't know, before or after I do Guardians sorry, Thor Ragnarok. But man, cuz I like I said, it's been so long I can't even remember like the plot of that film, but I know I watched it. But I haven't really revisited it since I was a little kid. I got to put it on the list. I definitely want to review that. Uh cuz wow, it's like, oh my god, why you have James Gunn? Just like in my review on the Christmas special with the Guardians on Disney Plus, it's like you got Peter Quill, who enjoys dancing and looks up to uh, Kevin Bacon. You don't have these two do like a dance number together. That is, completely missed opportunity right off the gate. And now I'm thinking about it. I'm pretty sure people brought this up when the Guardians 2 came out. You literally got the main actors from Tango and Cash in your film. I'm pretty sure they interacted on set and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure everybody had a ball. But it's just like for on screen, for the viewing public, have Tango and Cash interact or being like the final third act fight kind of thing, just to see these two go at. It's just like, come on, really? Oh God, because those two actors, like, I remember the chemistry in that. It was, like, phenomenal. God, I gotta revisit that. It's been so long. It's like those old '90s like cop movies are so fun, man. Anyway, but I was bringing up Ego because he turns out to be a celestial. So we finally get the other part of Peter Quill's lineage. So while Rocket and Baby Groot, stay behind with Nebula, watching over her while they fix the ship, the others go on board, meet Mantis for the first time, knowing about her empathic powers and stuff like that. And they end up going to Ego's planet. Now there's like a third act thing going on, not or at least like a C-list story going on, where Yondu gets into it with his essentially former boss, because while Yondu looked after Quill growing up, Stakar looked after Yondu when he was growing up, and that's how he learned what he learns about being a Ravager. And of course, the Ravagers are pirates, and Stakar is like the head leader, like the head pirate essentially. But they operate under one rule that they should not cross, which Yondu completely broke, and that's why he was exiled from the main Ravager group. And it turns out that the one rule that Yondu broke was trafficking children. And it will all come to head in pretty soon. So Yondu gets introduced to the Sovereign Lady, who requests the bounty on Peter Quill and the Guardians' heads. So Yondu took it up. But all the while, there is, Taser-faced, stupid name, with an ugly face. They're gone with ugly face, or melted face. Whispering like thoughts of mutiny, because they think Yondu's gone soft because he keeps giving so much leeway when it comes to Peter Quill that he would never let anybody dare do among the Ravagers. So they think he's playing favoritism, essentially. So they go off to find Quill. So, and this is probably one of my memorable but funniest moments in the film, about where, well, Ego's going off on his backstory of how, like, he was just birthed into the universe. He became sentient, and over a million years, he learned how to control his powers and create matter and things like that. It essentially formed this planet. And what they're looking at is essentially like an avatar that he created so he can actually interact with sentient life. and he always wanted a purpose. That's the one thing he lacked. So he traveled the galaxy. He eventually went to Earth, met up with Peter's mom, Meredith, and they had like a relationship in which it resulted in Peter's, um, uh, birth. And then Drax brings up like, so you have a penis? It's like, it's like that is kind of gross. And and he's like, well, my father always regaled me and my family about the tales of how him and my mom consummate their marriage. It's like, it's so gross. The way it was delivered is so freaking funny, and it's the Kurt Russell's delivery just made it all the more hilarious. It's like, yes, Drax, I have a penis. It's just to satisfy his curiosity. It's like, yes, I got all the amenities that I need to do what I need. Uh, but that part always got me. Still to this day, probably the funniest uh, moment in the Guardians films. Uh, but uh, but then eventually, he asks like, okay, because clearly you, as you say, like you love my mom, but why did you leave? Why didn't you come back when she died? And he expressed that, you know, he has to every once in a while come back to the planet because of my avatar is too far away from the main core. I will lose my powers. Uh, so I come back to Earth at least 3 times, but each of those times gets a little harder for me to leave. So that's why I hire Yondu to come collect you, but the guy backstabbed me and I never, got the chance to meet you all these years. Uh, and that's been why I've been searching for you for such a long time. Uh, so if I like he mentions like if I knew if I would have came back a fourth time, I was never gonna leave. Uh, so going back to Rocket, uh, Yandu's forces eventually found him somehow. Maybe they tracked the ship or something. And of course, Rocket, being the tech whiz he is, set up all these traps and everything like that. He's just crazy how good he is. And eventually, Yandu gets the upper hand with his little whistling arrow. But then the mutiny starts spiking up because Yandu thinks like, oh, we're gonna go against the people who hired us because he's not gonna turn Quill over to her to retrieve the bounty. So the mutiny sparks up. Before anything really pops off, Nebula gets set free by Baby Yoda. Not Baby Yoda, Baby Groot, uh, who lets her loose to help Rocket. And uh, Yondu, Rocket, and Groot all get captured and messed with by the rest of the Ravagers, who anybody who's Yondu's loyalist gets chucked out into space and killed in a very graphic way. It's just watching one of them gets sent out into the airlock and slowly freeze and lose, body morphs and everything like that. It's horrific because scientifically, that would happen to the human body if they're ejected into space with no air, and it's the freezing cold space. Uh, and Yondu essentially feels defeated, essentially. But only Kraglin was one who at first sided with Taserface, but then, James Gunn's brother, Kraglin, uh, starts to regret what he's done, what he did, or what he contributed after watching a lot of his friends get murdered like that. So Nebula takes one of the ships to go after Gamora so she can, take a bit of revenge out on her, and then pretty soon on Thanos. And then Groot walks by the cell, and Yondu and Rocket try to get him to find one of his spare fins to help manipulate his arrow. And of course, it's like a funny little montage where he keeps coming back with stupid random things. But eventually, Kraglin finds Groot and the fin and hands it to him, saying like, he's sorry and everything like that. He didn't know it'll turn out this way, kind of thing. He didn't want his friends to get killed. So he lets them loose. And an awesome scene where Yondu uses arrow to just kill everybody except Kraglin. And a little funny display right before Taserface dies, he sends out like a final message to the sovereign people, and it's like, let them know it was Taserface. And she just laughs before he dies because it's such a stupid name that even Rocket made fun of him in front of everybody because it's so ridiculous. And it's like, because the name is so, I don't even know how James Gunn even came up with it. It's just probably picked a random name off the top of his head. This sounds stupid, and he just ran with it. I'm like, that was pretty funny. Not to the same degree as the whole Drax penis thing, but it's pretty funny. So Yondu sent the ship to self-destruct while the rest make their escape to find Quill. After Yondu's saying like, we gotta find him, after he hears that Ego picked him up, it's like, oh, we gotta find Quill right away. We gotta stop Ego. And when after like a moment with Gamora and Quill get into an argument where Quill finally found his father and Gamora is a little suspect on his motives, she walks out in a huff in the middle of nowhere, and then Nebula shows up, starts firing, the ship's guns at her. They end up into this cave. They duke it out, but they eventually reconcile. But then they come across a pile of skeletons. So now they run back and ask Mantis, like, okay, what is going on? What is happening right here? Where's like whose skeletons belong to? And that's where we come to figure out when Ego is communicating with Quill about his ultimate goal, that he needs another Celestial to do. As far as he knows, he's the only one. So he didn't start off going to Earth. He eventually goes to millions of other planets and planting these little seedlings. It's like essentially extensions of himself to be cultivated and essentially, incubated, in each planet. And on each of these planets, he met up with a mate where he conceived children with. And he hopes that, any one of them would have also inherited his celestial gifts. So essentially, to have two celestials to be able to pretty much dominate the entire galaxy by extending himself, because literally name Ego is all about himself. And since none of the other children carry that, particular gene, he killed them. And that's where the piles of bodies. And he hired Yondu to be the one to get all those children from each of those planets to deliver to him. That's why he ends up getting exiled once, Stakar found out that he been, trafficking children this whole time. Now, of course, Yondu, after a while, did not know what Ego was planning on doing with those children. And that was up until the point where once he did figure out what he was doing with them, he came across Peter Quill and decided not to deliver Quill to Ego because, despite everything, Yondu had some level of a line he morally won't cross. Despite his like rough edges, he's like, I'm not all about this. In terms of like genocide or some, harm comes to children, he will, that's not his speed. He will never cross that line. That's not him. And he definitely doesn't want to work with anybody like that. So that's why he never delivered Quill when he's supposed to, and he just adopted him essentially. Because he figured that, hey, he's with me. There's no way Ego would ever know where he was at any given time, because if I left or if I brought him back to Earth or just left him on Earth, he would eventually just know where Earth is because he visited before. He would just come down and just take the boy wholesale. But he never, I don't know why he never explained that to Sakaar, but I guess maybe he didn't want to hear his like side of things. And there's like a whole thing with Yondu and Rocket. Yondu's laying it out for Rocket that he's just like Yondu, where it's like push people away because you're afraid of opening your heart to somebody else, kind of thing. Like you're that family. You gotta be okay with that. It's okay to care about somebody other than yourself, which is kind of like a theme going on, because Ego doesn't care about even his own children, despite what he might say. At the end of the day, it's all about him. And that's where he, admits that the last time he visited Earth, before he left, he implanted a tumor in his mom's head. Because he really did care about Meredith, but at the end of the day, it's still about him, and he can't have something. He didn't want that, okay? And he had like a mission because his purpose is the only thing that mattered, and she was like secondary. So Quill snaps out of it and just quickly starts shooting at him. And I like that whole little gesture with Ego. It's like, I know that sounds bad, and he just starts like firing immediately. It's like I don't even want to hear what your excuse is. F you. And I remember in the movie theater when I watched this film, everybody just like gasped and like, oh, the words "oh hell no" starts ringing all through the, it's like, what you just say? It's like it paid me putting that. As soon as he said that sentence, it's like it paid me to put that tumor in her head, and it's like, what? It's like, bro, you're a sick SOB, and just like, it's like I don't even need to hear anything else. We all would have acted just like Quill. Now, people gave Quill a lot of crap in Infinity War, where he kind of lost it when it comes to losing Gamora to Thanos, and kind of ruined Iron Man's plan on getting that glove off of his arm. But looking back on this, you can see like, okay, you know, you can say it's still stupid, but it kind of tracks with this guy, because looking here, he kind of snapped when he heard that this man or Celestial implanted a tumor that ultimately resulted in the death of his mom, where it probably did not need to happen in the first place. It wasn't like a natural thing. He did that. He killed his mom because he didn't want somebody that he cared for beyond himself, because he knew he was caring for her. And so he crushed Peter's little Walkman thing with, you know, his mom's music and everything like that. Well, he had Peter all strung up. Then Gamora and the others show up, and they grab Quill, and they had to go to the center of the planet to destroy his brain, so that way they can finally defeat him. Now, keep in mind, he mentioned earlier that Peter's power and immortality is connected to him. So if Ego goes, so does Peter's celestial power. And so he'll just be a mortal man. Because, you know, he's been teaching Peter how to utilize his powers. And so Rocket explained to Baby Groot how to work the bomb he fixed up with the Sovereign's batteries in order to cause a big enough explosion to take out the planet. Because Baby Groot is small enough to go further along into the core in order to plant it. Now, thinking about it, it's like, how is he even understanding anything about what's going on? Despite the simplicity of the bomb itself, I'm not sure we call him Baby Groot, but I don't know. Baby in terms of a tree, it's like how many rings? It's like 10? Because I don't know, it's like maybe a 10-year-old bare minimum is, you know, cognizant enough to understand the basic workings of like what to press and run back, you know, fast enough kind of thing. But besides all that, everybody's trying to essentially fight a planet. Meanwhile, the sovereign people start showing up and attacking, which they, you know, eventually fend them off. Then Peter went all Dragon Ball Z on Ego and turned himself into like a giant Pac-Man thing, because of course it kind of makes sense with his character. And so distracted Ego long enough for Groot to implant the bomb, set it, run back. Yondu stays behind to help out Quill while the others go back to the ship to get off the planet. While everybody's screaming like, Peter, Rocket, where's Quill? Where's Quill? Where's Quill? So Yondu shows up, you know, helps Peter fly off. Oh, of course, yeah, I don't want to forget like about the whole Mary Poppins thing. I don't find that very funny at all. People got a kick out of that. I guess that wasn't all that funny to me. But this was like an awesome moment where he literally flies Peter out of the atmosphere and only had like the one spacesuit thing that Rocket gave him. Was like, seriously, like none of y'all have like, y'all space travelers, y'all don't have like, you know, a crazy amount of, you know, spacesuit gizmos to attach to any one of y'all, but whatever. So Yondu gives Quill the only one that's available, so he can survive in space. So not before he says to Quills, like, after he Ego got destroyed, uh, Yandu tells him, like, he may have been your uh, he may have been your father, boy, but he sure wasn't your daddy. And that was a very heartwarming uh, line from Yandu, as he, we get certain flashbacks of him teaching a young Peter how to shoot and fight and all this other stuff, showing, like, yeah, a level of fatherhood, different level of a fatherhood where, like, essentially a stepfather or adoptive father, where it comes from, like, the most, out of nowhere places that you can imagine, uh, and what unconventional, but you know was a right kind of father and was a wrong kind of father. Full display in this film, uh, where a father who didn't really care about his own kids, let alone the mothers. Uh, where Yandu, who, like I said, had some rough edges about him, but at the end of the day, always had looked out for Peter every which way he could, because he saw that kid as a surrogate son. And kudos to Michael Rooker in this performance. He did an amazing job. So after his sacrifice, very Star Trek level thing where, his body is, like, incinerated and the ashes flown out into space. Rocket made sure he contacted the main group of Ravagers, who show up to give Yandu a proper ceremonial Ravager ceremony in honor of him for saving the galaxy. Uh, Gamora says her goodbyes to Nebula as she goes off to try to fight Thanos, which that ain't happening. Uh, and then Clargan or Clarigan or whatever, the other Ravager's name, who's taking up, who Peter gives Yandu's arrow to him as, like, he will want you to have this kind of thing, and then he gives Peter a Zune, saying, like, Yandu got this off of Earth. This, hosts 300 songs. It's like, you couldn't even give him an iPod. You gave him a Zune. And so it still bothered me. I don't know why that bothered me. It's like, a Zune. You really, James Gunn, you really just could not just be bothered just saying, like, it's an iPod. Or maybe it's because it belongs to Sony, so Sony and Marvel had this kind of weird relationship going on. But it's still, though, you couldn't really just, just pony up like an iPod shuffle or something. But irregardless, so now the movie ends, and of course you get the post credits scene with, like, Baby Groot growing up into a teenager. Then the most egregious one, that looking back, how crazy it was of the decision that the Sovereign had built up a new sentient being, which we will know to be Adam Warlock, and we will never see this guy until well within phase 5. Mind you, this I think it was in, like, phase 3 at this point. So we didn't see for at least 2 phases of the MCU. We didn't finally get Adam Warlock, where we should have at least had him sprung up in Endgame. That is wild to me. That is probably the biggest con I have for this film. The fact that how crazy it was, we introduced Adam Warlock, and it took so long for that to come to fruition. That is just kind of wild to me. But anyway, that was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, uh, so eventually I will get to Thor Ragnarok so I can finally get through with all the Avengers films, including Civil War. Uh, so, to cover is enough of the MCU stuff as possible, because I pretty much review the vast majority of MCU related content, aside from maybe like the Netflix shows, which eventually I will cover, because I want to get into some Daredevil stuff pretty soon. When definitely before the next new-ish reboot of the Daredevil show comes back to Disney for Disney Plus. But yeah. Oh, and then speaking of Adam Warlock and stuff, man, it gets me to thinking about that Marvel Rivals game that's supposed to be coming out eventually. But they just now introducing like Adam Warlock and Hela and some other couple of people. It's supposed to be, the game is supposed to be like a kind of like an Overwatch type of game, but with Marvel characters. And I looked through it last night. I wasn't really on my radar because I know it's been like on people's radar for like weeks now, or months. But I wasn't really focused on that because I thought it was like a janky mobile game at first. But it wasn't until like a few days ago where it's like, it's like, let me take a really good look at this, because it seems like kind of like, getting a lot of hype recently. And so I'm looking through it, and it's like, like I said, like at first it looked like some janky mobile game, but I don't know, I'm starting to warm up to it. So I might do some like a new kind of like a gameplay videos for this kind of thing whenever that comes out. They didn't announce any kind of release date. They're just doing, because I think they had like a open alpha type of thing not too long ago, so it wasn't even like an open beta yet. So it's pretty far out before we eventually have it wholesale. But I'm looking forward to that. Just really want to try it out. It looks very interesting. But anyway, next week I'll be covering at least 2 movies back to back, because it's gonna be a good handful of movies I want to talk about for a month of June, for Father's Day movie month. So let me you want like a good teaser of what I'll be reviewing? Here it is.
This is Sparta!
There's your little teaser of what I'll be reviewing next. But anyway, thank you all for stopping by to hear my thoughts on Guardians 2. And I might see you guys later on tonight, because they dropped Homelander for MK1, so I want to try that out for a little bit. Don't know what I'm doing for tomorrow for any kind of gameplay stuff, but definitely this weekend, probably Saturday, I'll probably have the final season of Food Wars ready for review, so I can get right into reviewing some Batman TV shows for the next group of TV show reviews, because I want to take a bit of a break from anime for a while. But after I get through, like, because I'm gonna be checking out all of Batman the animated series, Batman Beyond, The Batman, and Brave and the Bold. Once I get through all those, I'll be heading into anime again with My Hero Academia, because I already did like the first season, which is on my up on my YouTube channel, but I want to get before season 7 comes out on English dub, I want to get through season 2 through 6, and then I don't know what I'm gonna do after that, because I'm thinking about like going through some Naruto and maybe Bleach simultaneously. I'm not sure. I mean, that is the hopeful plan, but don't quote me on that part. But as far as the Batman stuff and My Hero Academia, those are definite things I'm doing. But anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Take care. Have a great weekend.